Hello, Hugh. Welcome to the Gurit Foiling Week Forum 2020. How are you? Good?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, good. I'm sorry I can't be there this year, but traveling's not quite so good these days. Nice to see
No,
Andrew
we
though.
know. We know. Um, we are glad to have you here with us. We have seen some recent pictures of this project on Lac Le Mans for Thomas uh, called the QFX, if I get it right.
Yep.
Which is a four people foiler, let's say. Currently not foiling yet in awaiting foils, but seems like an interesting concept. Um, would you like to tell us more on client and how they're both unique?
Yeah, sure. Well, Thomas Yunt came and sailed the came and sailed the Q23 when we were down in Italy one time, and liked that, and yeah, bought one. So he's been sailing that on out of Geneva, and had a good time with it. But it's not terribly suited when you get something like the bees coming in, and there's a lot of sea, and the foil configuration and the hull shape are better suited to the lighter winds of the Zurich or some of the other smaller lakes. So we had a discussion in the beginning of last year, I guess, about doing a new boat that would be capable of winning the Bold D'Or. And the starting point for that was really the Quant 30, because we knew how effective that was in the light weather. It's pretty effective in a breeze, but obviously, it'd be nice to fly it. And the idea was to go just a little bit bigger, and eventually we ended up with this that really is a development from the Q30. It's really a 33-foot boat with a bit of extra length on the front, and the displacement's kept down as low as we possibly can, and enough sail area, and then plus foils, and it should be a pretty good performer. So for the moment, Thomas is sailing it with racks and all the people on trapezes, and it works well. He's very pleased. We're very pleased generally.
What is the weight of the boat and the sail area? Just top of your mind.
The sailing weight is around about 1,200 kilos with a crew.
Okay. And the sail area?
Enough. I can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember. I'm working on a bigger boat at the moment. So I have other figures in my brain at the moment.
Yeah.
For this sort of thing. But you have to call a limit somewhere, and really you end up with to get the displacement down, which is what we want to get for the early foiling, and to be able to not have a boat that starts getting heavier and heavier and heavier, to add more sail area. We try to go the other way and get maximum efficiency from everything that we do on the boat. So it has a pretty advanced composite structure, which came from Will Brooks from Ineos and Alenghi and other America's Cup campaigns, and we've worked together a lot in the past. And we ended up at sort of 35 feet really, because then you got a bit bigger, and then scale effect starts working against you, and it starts getting harder to keep your ratios where you would like to have them. And so we end up with about as light a 35-foot boat as you could
get.
Yeah, and structurally it seems to have been too strong. And all the way through the process, Thomas was very clear that he wanted to build the boat to 90% safety margins, and he was always telling us to go lighter and to go lighter, and he was giving me a hard time. He was giving the SeaTech in New Zealand a hard time on the mast, and he was giving Doyle Sails in New Zealand a hard time on the sails as well. But at the end of the day, until you go foiling, you don't know what sort of loads really are going to go into this boat. So far, so good.
Yeah, I understand from some comments I've seen in the press by Thomas that he also wanted this boat to perform well in displacement.
Yes, yes.
My question is how difficult it is to make that happen once the foils are installed.
There's no difficulty at all, because the foils are can be fully retracted. They don't touch the water. There's no water exit. So the boat can effectively sail in several different ways. You can either have the straight displacement sailing, which will take you up to about 9 or 10 knots, and after that then you're probably starting to use the foils. You can use them as a normal DSS configuration, which is probably the best one to use if conditions are getting difficult and you don't actually want to fly the boat with the consequences of dropping off the foils or pitch poling or all the other things that can happen if you're flying. So you can run it in DSS mode, and then you can run it in a fairly low flight, or you can run it in in as bad higher flight as we think is sensible.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can cover really all the conditions that the boat should be, the boat should handle actually.
Okay. Well, I find interesting this possibility of sailing with the foils basically almost fully retracted, but in DSS mode, or extend foil and go up. It's basically like in the boat. Practically, you can go displacement, DSS, or if you wish also sailing, then full fine. That's possible with this boat.
Yeah, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit there, Luca.
Is it possible to sail this boat in practically 4 modes: displacement with DSS, planing, and foiling?
Yes,
Can you do all of this?
all of them, yes, and they all overlap actually to a degree. So when you're in the transition zone, it's going to be more a question of sail choice as to whether you want to be in one particular mode, or in a faster mode and low flying or skimming, or you can let the conditions decide what you can or should be doing.
Okay, and also there's an interesting approach that I believe applies to this boat, which is the idea that you can go on trapeze till the boat is foiling, and then you sit on the boat for safety reason. We have seen how difficult trapezing foil can be by super foilers, capsizes that happened even to. So I think it is a good decision to make it this way. Can you tell us on what, like, in which range do you think they are going? At which speed will they be going from these non-foiling to seat and foiling?
It always depends. It depends a little bit on the actual wind conditions and the wind shear and everything else. But we would expect, that flat water, then you can trapeze. Certainly in DSS mode, because the boat is smooth, it's not bouncing around. The helmsman isn't. You haven't got the rapid accelerations. You've got good constant speed, but you don't have the accelerations that you do if you're in a full flight mode. But as soon as you get into full flight mode, then you should be well attached to the boat and sitting on the boat, and the wing configuration is arranged for that. The design was based around that sort of that all the time. If you're flying, you're up on the foils, you're sitting on the boat and firmly attached. And the helmsman can bear off and do all the course adjustments he needs to, and you're not going to get thrown off the boat. Trapezing on a foiling boat is not a good idea.
No, I totally agree. And is this boat planned to be like a one-off, or is it here to create a class, like Le Mans?
We have the molds, we have the tools. We're quite happy to build a second generation of this one. And so far, we've seen. Thomas has some ideas for some things he'd like to change, inevitably. But the basic hull seems to be good. We might increase some of the details within the wing molding, so you've got a slightly better footrest in there. And I'm sure the more they sail it, and certainly once they've started foiling it, then they'll start to have more ideas of does the rig need to evolve in any way, just general handling, just details actually. And overall, we're pleased with the boat. You can always do a second one a little bit better, and yes, we're very happy to do more of them. Thomas is very happy.
Yeah. Okay. We have seen in the past years you have been involved in quite a number of foiling and DSS projects. We have here the Foiling Week, the 10 feet spoiler, which are going to practice with kids doing, let's say, a special promotional event with the match race together with World Match Racing Tour in the next 2 days. It's going to be fun. But tell us more about also the other projects you do with the moment. One you can mention.
At the moment, the one we can talk about is that we're building a 52-foot race boat, DSS offshore race boat, 52 foot, and we're building that in the States. The hull tuning is nearly finished, and that will be we have 2 boats in order at the moment. We think there's some more on the way. The first boat will be done in time to do the Ensenada race on the west coast of America, and then the Transpac, and then finally heads to Sydney. That's with a very experienced Australian owner who will run a very good campaign. And then the second boat will be coming to Europe for an owner who likes doing all the RORC races and with his eye on the Fastnet race. This cool. Is
and any more small boats as well?
I'm going to do a little foiling motorboat, which will be which is fun when I find some time. We're talking, with Mitchie. We're talking about another project, which would be a DSS boat, not a flight. I'm always talking to different people, and it's a question. There's a bit of uncertainty at the moment as to who's doing what and where and when. When we know a bit more about how the whole COVID situation resolves itself, then I think there'll be a bit more clarity, and people will start doing things again. At the moment, though, when we're busy actually with the big boats, and much bigger than 52 foot than we are in the small boats.
Okay, but as a designer, would you say that the majority or 90% or 100% of your projects involve ESS or some kind of foiling, or what is the percentage?
Yeah, so 100%.
100%.
On the new boats, 100%, yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so no, the world finally wakes up to what you can do. I mean, it was very good to have Canova, the Baltic 43-meter, out sailing finally, and that's all gone. That's all gone pretty well. Teething, usual teething problems with the overall boat, but nothing to do with our side of things, which is nice. And so there's a lot more inquiries coming in from the super yacht side of things, and we're dealing with some of those at the moment, and I expect some of them will end up as real boats and some of them won't. but that's pretty normal.
Hey, so Hugh, it's Andrew here.
Yeah.
Say us back to, it looks like Le Petit Lac at Geneva in the picture. So it talks about this boat again. I know this is not where you've got things on but just throw me a number as to what, if you thought you were going to be able to produce something like that, where would you be coming out at?
So, sorry, could you say that again, Andrew? You're breaking up in the middle of that.
Okay, I'll give it another go. I was just looking at your boat on Lake Geneva there, and I know that the costs you'll have for this, because it's a prototype, but therefore you can't treat those as what you'd be looking at if you were to be producing, let's say, 6 or 8 or 10 of them. What, just as a ballpark figure, and not for any purpose other than interest, would you think that you would be able to produce a fleet of boats per unit? If just, I mean, is it 300,000, 500,000? Where do you think?
Oof. It's not something we've actually looked at particularly, but if we say, well, we've got the tooling, we know what that cost. I guess that if you're building a series, you could probably be down around about the 200, 250 maybe.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the competitive nature of lake sailing in Geneva, and the TF35, which I think comes in at like $1 million. Then you, for somebody who wants a 35-foot boat that can foil, then this is quite an interesting, for a lake like Geneva. This could be quite an interesting prospect, couldn't it?
Yeah, you'd like to think so. Maybe it's sort of 300, but I think you could certainly do it inside 300.
Yeah.
300 EU. I think the sort of the base level, the sort of costs come down when you try to avoid putting too much boat there, and very little in the way of complications in systems. And for example, we don't have any active flight controls. I'm a great believer in, if the designer does a job properly, then minor adjustments might be needed along the way, but maybe between sail changes or crew weight changes. But the boat should mostly look after itself, which is always the ethos behind the Quant 23. And basically, when we put the thing in the water, we went sailing and it worked.
But so for the ride height, educate a thicky old man like me as to how is the ride height controlled on this?
Well, basically by how deep you put down the foils. And if in the first stage, then it's in DSS mode, and you won't fly. You can't fly. Right. But then you can go a little bit further, and you can get the hull to be just about skimming, but you don't get into the realm where you have to control the flight attitude, which is always the big problem if you start sailing in a seaway, and the sea when it builds up on Lake Geneva can be pretty brutal actually.
Yep.
I've had plenty of times when I was sailing with a full pelt assorted boats, when you thought this is a pretty nasty place to be, and obviously from the
Bold last year.
Yeah, and that you saw what kicked up on that, and that was horrendous. And I just sort of turned home just at one side of that lot. So you've got to be able to mode the boat, for these conditions. And I guess that's the challenge of something like this for Thomas's boat, was that most of the time you've got to deal with the conditions you see in the picture, but sometimes you have got 30 knots and you have to deal with it. And so the boat has to be capable of being moded, reefed, small sails when required, and just being able to configure itself for whatever the conditions throw at it. And that I guess is the biggest challenge on this boat actually.
So back to this whole thought of foiling, saying that 100% of the the work you're doing nowadays is foiling. So do you think Genie wants now really out of the box for going back to this, or is the whole future of the sailing truth going to be about more and more?
No idea. It's sort of, foiling isn't for everybody. I think we're still early days, aren't we? And quite what directions it goes in. I think one of the things we've seen from the people that have been sailing the 23 and some of the other little boats is a lot of the time they just like sailing for fun because they've suddenly rediscovered the fun of going sailing, and they don't necessarily want to race the boats.
Well, I bought myself a Dragon last year, and I thought to race it because I'd lose.
Yeah, Dragon racing is great, particularly for the driver and not the crew, actually. And it's well, it's a painful business being the crew actually sometimes. And but yeah, they're great boats and they're great boats for racing.
Are you asking Hugh to make your losing Dragon a foiling boat?
Yeah, but perhaps DSS and onto the Dragon, and maybe that would be your alternative.
Yeah, we see them more mainstream as more DSS type things rather than flying boats. So people get a lot of easy speed, but without any of the complications or the dangers, such as they are, and they can be. You have to treat boats like this if you're flying them or foiling them with a lot of respect. Actually, you have to understand what you're doing and what your limitations and what the boat's limitations are.
Yeah, I suppose on that is the use of a foil is not necessarily foiling as such. It depends on what we mean by the word foiling, doesn't it? Because we tend to think now, I suppose, of foiling being out of the water, riding just on the foils, as opposed to giving that lift that I guess the BSS solution provides. Is that, have I got it right as a semi-layman?
Yes, I suppose one should break it down into foil assisted and foiling. I think you start looking at like the 60s, and they've learned fairly quickly that low foiling is probably the most sensible thing as far as they're concerned. The guys that try to fly a little bit higher have come back from that very quickly. And low flying, so the boat can recover from the foil tripping over itself or something happening, and it has a bit of a nose down, but it doesn't actually tent peg itself and fall over. Then is a more appropriate way for most people to go foiling.
Well, I think, in my opinion, the biggest selling point of the DSS is not the speed, but the comfort.
Sorry, you're breaking up again, Luca.
Sorry, in my opinion, the biggest selling point of the DSS is not the extra speed, but it's the comfort. I think there is a huge demand for sailing more comfortably, and this is what we see by the extra demand for catamaran. But also I believe it's going to come with the DSS way.
I think that's very true. I mean, certainly all it was something that when we first tried a DSS foil on a 40-footer in Australia, the real difference we saw was the comfort and the motion and the way that changed, and suddenly it was easier to sail and nicer to sail and all the rest of it. And all the reports that then come back from the 46 from Canova about how it's and Wild Joe actually, which is a retrofit on the 60-footer. People just say it's just so nice to sail on a boat that doesn't jerk around all the time, doesn't heel as much. Yeah, it's all a plus, and certainly for the super yacht guys, it's a huge bonus. And that's why I think we're getting all the interest from these guys, is because it's something that's easier to sell to the family, and just makes life nicer.
Okay.
You can go and have lunch, which is nice.
So where on the lake? If I'm going to Geneva, where would I actually go and see this thing doing stuff?
Go to YCS. SNJ. Sorry, SNJ. I'll send you an email for Thomas, Andrew, because he'd be delighted to take you out for a sail or anything.
That'd be great. I've got a home just down the road from there, so it would be great fun to go and do that. And I can get Bernard Schopfer to buy me lunch at the SNG.
Yeah, well, it's always a good lunch there. It's sort of but no, the boat lives there, along with some of his other fleet. So yes, you're very welcome there. Actually,
Great.
I'll drop him a note there and put you in touch with him.
In the list. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, any other question? I think we're done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure to have you at the Foiling Week Gourid Forum. We look forward to see also your next projects, perhaps next year.
Yeah, no, it's sort of there's an interesting year or two coming up. Actually, it's good fun. It's great fun.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers.